Welcome to Python Basics, Lesson 5. Today we're going to be talking about while loops. Now this is going to be a relatively short video. We did cover the for loop, and while loops are very similar, but there are a couple of exceptions I want to point out in this particular tutorial, and hope you got your thinking caps on, and let's get right to it. Let's look at a very simple example of a while loop. First we want to declare a variable. Our variable is I, and let's say I equals the number 1. All right, and in this particular loop we can execute it by using the while keyword, while I is less than 6. So we're asking it to iterate over this variable while this statement is true, and each time we iterate we're going to print I just so we can see it. Let me put my colon there, and then we're going to increment I by 1 by using the plus equals increment function. Okay, now that we've had this, let's run our code. As you can see, while I is less than 6, we printed I and then we incremented, and the result of our code is 1 2 3 4 5 because this is less than 6. 5 is less than 6. We can also say is less than or equal to, and we're going to get a slightly different result. Let's execute our code again. And you can see it included the number 6 because while I is less than or equal to 6. Okay, very simple example. Let's show a more common and somewhat complicated example. And this is the while loop being used to terminate an application, and we're going to reuse this code, but before we do that, let's set up our while loop, and we can start with while true. Now while the condition is true, the code is going to execute. Okay, so let's put our code here. I'm going to copy that and I'm going to comment this out so it won't execute twice. So while this is true, and make sure that we do our indentations correctly, otherwise the code will not function properly. Okay. Now we're going to declare another variable, and this variable is going to be called choice, because we're going to give the user a choice to continue or quit the application. So we're going to use an input function here. Inside this input, we want to ask the question, do you want to continue? And they have two options. They can say yes with a Y or no with an N. All right, make sure we have all of our parentheses in place. All right. All right, now we get to use an if statement, if choice, and we're going to use a function that lowers the case of the input. So if they type a uppercase Y or an uppercase N, this is going to force it into a lower, so we can deal with just the lowercase values. And we're going to say anytime if choice is not equal to Y, what are we going to do? We're going to break out of the loop. Simple as that. And that should be enough to execute our code. So let's clear out down here and let's run our code. Let's reiterate what we're doing. So while this is true, I equals 1, and we're going to iterate through while I is less than or equal to 6. We're going to print our variable, and then we're going to increment it by 1. And after each one of these iterations, we will have the option to continue or quit using this particular execution right here. So choice, input, we get to choose yes or no. And if the choice is not yes, this exclamation equals means not, we can break out of that loop. All right, let's execute our code, make sure everything is working. All right, we have invalid syntax. All right, so in my statement, I need a colon. All right, so you can see our first while loop worked. It printed out 1 through 6, and then it asked, do we want to continue? I'm going to put yes, and it executes again. And this time I'm going to choose no, and then we exit the application. So that's a really good use case for a while loop, and you will see this particularly when we start building projects that allow users to provide input, that while true looping mechanism is going to be very helpful in defining how our application works. All right, I hope you enjoyed this lesson, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one. Have a good day.